Limited edition.
And we're back.
Limited edition music intro.
That's right. That music is good because we keep getting copyright claims on it. But
even though we used the right methods to do it, we did everything right, and we are being unfairly punished.
That's right.
Welcome,
We bought the copyright and everything.
welcome to the show. We're complaining.
That's right. Yeah, welcome back to 8-Bits, everybody. The show where we interview the people behind the tech. I'm your host, Brandon Minnick, and with me, as always, PJ Metz. PJ, how's your week?
Listen, my week's great. It's only Tuesday, but I'm really excited because this is my last full week before I take some PTO for December. Because next week, so this is first off an exciting moment for me. For those of you who are just hearing me for the first time, I'm a former high school teacher who got into tech in May of this year after learning to code with Brandon and Chloe and the rest of the tech community on Twitter. Everyone helped me learn, really. But I was afraid. I'm getting out of teaching. I'm losing out on winter off. I'm losing out on summers off. I'm losing out on all this time off that comes with teaching. Nope. The company has unlimited PTO, and my boss was like, hey, I'm taking 2 weeks at Christmas so I can spend the holidays with my family. I was like, we can do that? And she was like, yeah, I'm not going to be here. You shouldn't be here either. I was like, this is great news.
Yeah, that's very common. I know at Microsoft, where I work, Decembers are dormant. And basically, I've learned over the last couple of years of working here that you just don't schedule anything for December. Do you have any deadlines, or if you have any critical meetings and milestones, get them done before giving holiday here in the US, which is the end of November, or schedule them for January because, we like to take a well-deserved break. And even yesterday, my wife and I were chatting about, well, what do we want to do? And so we're doing a road trip to somewhere warmer.
Awesome. Hey, what's the address of where you're going to be staying so we can all find you?
Yeah. So my week's been good. But speaking of which, this is our last episode of 8-Bits for the year. So speaking of well-deserved time off, we'll be back in full force in January. But stay tuned because we already have a bunch of amazing guests queued up.
Absolutely. And very excited for today. And I'm interested to get into it. I don't have a lot to talk about. I ran a half marathon. I'm showing it off here.
Congratulations.
I've got the medal back here. Took me 2 hours and 50 minutes. I was out of 2,000 plus participants. I was in the last 100 to cross the finish line. But look, I did it. Still counts. I can still say I ran it. And the only reason I bring it up is because I know, Brandon, you also are training for one. I'm excited for that. Is that the Napa Marathon?
Napa Valley Marathon in March. That's right.
I might have to come out to support you in that, just because I know how much a half marathon hurt, and you're going to be hurting twice as much as me. So I need to be there to cheer for you and meet you at all the spectator spots.
That'd be awesome. I mean, yeah, after this show, I'm literally running. I have to do a 7-mile warm up, and then I do 3 to 4 miles at my training pace, which will be 7-minute, 30-second mile or 8-minute mile. So, after you do a casual 7-mile warm up.
For those of you listening on the podcast, you can't see, but my eyes are the size of dinner plates right now when he said 7-mile warm up, because the longest distance I ever ran in training for my half was 7, because I'm bad at training. Also, I drink Monster Energy drinks, and that's, not good for me either, but
yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I just Google how to train for marathon, and usually there's a 16-week training program that you can just copy paste. And so I just blindly follow it, and in hopes that I'll be able to survive on marathon day.
Yeah, man. I'm sure you're going to be fine because you've got You don't have the extra heft that I have. So it takes a lot more energy to push 270 pounds than it does to push you. You live athletic boy, you.
Also got the new Nikes, the ones that
Ooh,
basically help you
nice.
cheat. And
Oh,
just
is it
got
the
to try
ones that are
those out.
banned?
I think they're technically legal, but the
Okay.
rules were made after they were already used in like record-setting races, so they kind of had to
Yep.
make them legal. And they're incredible. Like you can
Ugh.
feel it pushing you,
Yes.
and you kind of have to change your stride when you run with them to like take full advantage of it. But
Uh-huh.
once you figure it out, it's like you almost feel this like boing, boing, boing.
It is weird.
As you're running.
That the tech and shoes is taking us amazing places, and that leads me to think about tech in general, and that's the point of this show, right, Brandon?
Absolutely. And we have such a great guest to be a disservice to be chatting about ourselves any further. Our guest today, I've known him for a couple years. We kind of live in same tech circles with mobile app development, with GraphQL. But speaking of GraphQL, he is the founder of Chili Cream, one of the most well-known companies for making GraphQL services in .NET. Welcome to the show, Michael Staib.
Ta-da!
Hey!
Hi guys.
Michael, it's so good to see you. For anybody that doesn't know, Michael and I were actually just hanging out together in person. We got to see each other in Prague a couple weeks ago at a conference called Update. But Michael, for anybody who doesn't know you, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so who am I? I'm Michael Staib, as Brandon already introduced me. And I'm a Vivid .NET developer for, I would say for the last 20 years. And I really love open source. So I'm an open source developer and got actually into open source because of my brother. He dragged me into it, doing free work for others. And and then at some point I met GraphQL, or the technology, when Facebook introduced it, and started an open source project. And that's actually how I got into touch at one point with Brenton.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's do a quick describer, because I'm sure we'll be talking about GraphQL a lot. For anybody who doesn't know GraphQL, what is it? And maybe how does it compare to what we know as REST?
Yeah, so GraphQL was introduced by a company called Facebook. I think most of us know this company. And they actually introduced GraphQL as a way to fix their issues that they had with their first mobile application. So when they initially released their Facebook apps for mobile, they got a lot of criticism. And I remember these crappy apps. But they actually didn't do a lot wrong there. They just used what they know. So HTML and standard REST calls. And they put this all together essentially in a browser frame, in an app. Actually, what you do today, a lot of mobile apps today are made with React or stuff like that. But what they found out is that back then it really didn't perform, because we had rubbish 3G networks, and REST is not very optimized for the mobile use case, because we have these predefined backends where we have predefined requests. And that means we, in the end, will consume a lot more data than we actually need for our mobile devices. So that's when 3 developers in Facebook came up with something called GraphQL, which essentially gives the consumer of APIs the power to ask for what you want. So that's the short version of GraphQL.
Yeah, and truly, that's why when I first saw it, I fell in love with it, because as a mobile app developer myself, I know the pains of having to trust the user's internet connection. Users on cellular data plans, are constantly switching between cell phone towers, especially if you're moving through the city on a bus, or maybe then you go underground on a train. Internet connections can't be trusted. And so you want to make as few internet requests as possible. And yeah, I remember the first time learning about GraphQL, where I was like, wow, instead of making a dozen API requests, I can just make one. So my app loads faster. I used less of my user's cellular data plan. Like, yes, give it to me.
Yeah, it is really empowering if you show it to front end developers. It sells itself. So they just see it, try it a bit out, and then they say, oh, I don't want to do anything else anymore. I'm just doing GraphQL from now. But for backend developers, it's sometimes scary. It's like, okay, now everybody can ask for what they want, so everybody can arbitrarily query my backend, so people get a bit freaked. But it's actually not that scary when you get into it.
I've heard the same concerns. But tell you what, let's zoom out a little bit, because GraphQL is definitely today. Some would argue it's the future. We're on the video podcast, zooming out. Also,
I got
physically,
jokes.
not just metaphorically. But yeah, let's go way back, because Michael, you haven't been working on GraphQL your whole life, and on 8-Bits we love to know the people behind the tech and how you got into it. So if we go way back, when did you first start coding or getting into computers, getting into tech?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I often think that's different for my so I'm now 40, so I actually be going on my 42 now in December. So
happy
we
early
grew
birthday.
up differently.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes, on the 20th is my birthday, so send me a GitHub star as a present.
That's right. That's right, y'all. Right there at Chili Cream. So, because earlier you said 20 years ago, right? So at 2022 is when you got started in tech. Did you start that'd be college age? Did you get introduced to it in college back in the 90s?
Oh, I have a zigzag way, I would say. So I actually got into computers with around 6, because my father was an engineer, and we had these big IBM machines, and so I got into programming very early due to my father. But into professional development, I get around 20. And in Germany, we have several ways to get into your job. So you don't have to have a college degree in the beginning. I actually started with something. How would we translate that into English? It's a way you actually learn on the job in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But it's more formalized. You have school system set there up, and you learn computer science on the job. And I actually did my college way back after that in the evenings. So
it's awesome.
I didn't take the straight way into the college.
To be fair, the straight way is the non-zigzag way is, I think, the less fun path, because oftentimes it's that zigging and zagging that gives you something outside of everyone else's experience that becomes what makes you not valuable, because, like, we're not commodities, but like what gives you insight into things that you otherwise wouldn't. Like, I'd say that Brandon, of the three of us, might have the most straight line in the tech, but even he will tell you that, no, I was over here in engineering, and I was over here on cruise ships working on comm systems, and I was doing server stuff that wasn't really quite what I do now. That zigzag is what I mean. If the point of a journey is to see things along the way, then the zigzag is going to make for a broader journey, and thus you bring more to the table into your experience. So I would say, to me, it sounds like you're saying, like, oh, I had to go here, and then I had to go here, and then zigzag. That's fine. We like that, especially on this show. We love that.
Yes, it's the problem, I think, in today's world is that you expect a 20-year-old to know what he wants to do. So with 20, I was not sure if I really want to do computer science, because this was a hobby for me. So I did it, and I essentially grew up at a startup in Germany. So technology-wise, work-wise, I grew up at a startup where I just did it for fun, just programmed. And I didn't want to go to college yet, because I thought, I really wanted to work, to mess around with stuff, and also do parties. What a 20-year-old wants to do. So I took this detour and dropped out of my school back then. Went to that startup and did a lot of work there. Learned a lot. I have to say I learned a lot about how you start a company, how to get projects done. I wouldn't say that I learned clean concepts in the beginning. It was more, we need to get this feature out, we need to get this done. So you did everything to just make things happen. But it's good to have experienced that.
Absolutely.
Yes, you mentioned when you were younger, I think you said 6 years old, kind of got into computers with the help of your engineering father. What was that first computer? Do you remember what you were working on?
It was an IBM Duet 16. I don't know if somebody knows that. Duet 16 from IBM. It has 2 floppy disks. And the thing that mesmerized me is my father had this AutoCAD program where he essentially did plannings for a system, but it could draw a space shuttle. I think it took 5 minutes to actually draw the space shuttle on there. But it was like, this thing can create the space shuttle, and I really wanted to create also my stuff there. I wanted to draw essentially on the screen. And my father essentially showed me in Turbo Pascal how to use the line commands to draw stuff, not in AutoCAD, but with programming commands. And that's essentially how I got into programming. And that fascinated me, that you could create something with these devices. And it's still an empowering feeling to program.
That seems to be a common theme among a lot of the guests that we talk to, and even just people I talk to in tech. The idea of, you discover that the machine, when you tell it a certain password or secret code, will create something, and that you've been involved in making something brand new, is a lot of the excitement that gets people into tech. And it's, if I can make a spaceship, or if this can make a spaceship, what can I make it do? And I do want to highlight that tendency of early tech to be like, we're going to show you this picture, but we're going to draw it right in front of you with like lines and colors and shapes. And I love the idea of like the system's like, it's like the machine is drawing. You don't see that enough anymore.
Yeah, it's, and also we don't build the machines. When I look at tech today, like my son or my daughters, they grew up with these devices, so they really are digital natives, but they don't build their iPads. They just get these machines and they work.
That's true.
And we built them essentially back then. Tried to get maybe a new graphics card in there, and then I destroyed a lot of computers in my family.
Brandon, did you ever brick a computer or mess up a computer in your house when you were growing up, when you were messing with it?
Oh yeah, I did the same thing where, you want to buy a new graphics card, or I think the one time I really did some damage was I bought a new power supply.
How old were you at this?
Oh, probably teenager.
Yeah.
But
old enough to know, like, this is what it's called and able to find it. Right. Maybe not old enough to be doing that on your own. Like, yeah, put a new power supply in, Mom. And your mom's like, sure.
Yeah, well, then you just kind of guess and check, like, how do you connect the power supply to the motherboard? Like, here's some pins. Let's see if this works. But yeah, when you're dealing with electricity, you don't really want to guess and check, because if you get it wrong, there's sometimes no going back.
Sometimes it's a little more dangerous. Oh man, Corbob said, I took a CPU off board, then put it back, and it didn't turn on afterwards.
Oh, yeah, typical thing.
Totally normal. You're in good company, Bob. So, at a young age, you talked about putting together computers. 6 years old, you get this first machine. You said it was a hobby, even going into college. What are some of the languages? What are some of the things you were doing as a hobby in your teenage years?
So I started with Turbo Pascal, but that essentially was what my father could do. But then also went in QBasic, so the basic DOS programming things that came basically for free. But I also did some Delphi, and then in 2002 came the first betas out of Microsoft.NET, and by then I did already a bit of Java, like servlet programming and stuff, messing around with that. But Microsoft.NET was like this new stuff, and that really got me. Although it was rubbish in the beginning, the idea behind it and the perspective where it could go was amazing. I think it just got where it had to be when Mono came out, and it was then you could run it on Linux. You now with .NET Core went even further. You can run it everywhere now on a Raspberry Pi. You're not limited anymore.
Those early days, man, like it really, like I remember, like when you're talking about .NET and what you're building with .NET in, 2002, 2003. This is still where the internet is. Like the .com bubble just happened, so people thought the internet was done, and it was still doing stuff. But like this is a unique era that we're talking about here. This is still Angel Fire and GeoCities and these like there's a vibe to that time period, But so you talked about starting with .NET in those early days. Did you start building with it like pretty quickly, or is it something that you saw and came back to later?
Yeah, remember so Microsoft was looking for beta testers, and you could order a CD. I mean, today you just download it, right? But you could order a CD. You could sign up, and they sent you a CD with .NET on it, and Visual Studio Beta for .NET. It was great. I mean, if you go further back, you got Windows on floppies. Yeah, I think kids today don't appreciate these days anymore.
Kids these days need to use more floppy disks. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I got these. I think it was 3 CDs with Visual Studio on it, .NET Framework on it, and I started installing it and just playing around with it. And it was pretty easy to get in because they copied a lot of the concepts of Java. So kind of you could get started very quickly with it. And then I tried to put it in projects I was working on. And try to find a use case for it. So just to keep using it. And that's where I essentially got stuck. It worked. And I, at one point, ended up at a company called Red Dot, which was a web content management company, which fits perfectly in this com.dot bubble, where you had all these CMS companies building these web CMSs. And yeah, I worked at Red Dot, and we were, I think, twice bought by first a Canadian company and then another Canadian company, OpenText. Yeah. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun to see all these very tiny companies coming up with similar ideas. like making use of the web. I think Web 2.0 was the term that everybody loved back then. Yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Red Dot. I didn't know you worked there, but
Yeah.
I remember my first internship. I worked in IT for Walt Disney World in Orlando, and we actually were looking for a new CMS system. And I remember the Red Dot vendors coming in, and so I don't remember if we bought it or not. I wasn't that important. I was just kind of happy to be invited to the meeting as an intern. But that's so cool to think you might have been working there while we were maybe looking to buy into your product.
Why didn't you?
Yeah, what's the deal?
Honestly, we probably did. I remember, like I said, like I was an intern, so I didn't get to make any decisions. And even if I did, I was only there for 3 months. But I remember it being at the top of the list. And I think it was between like, do we just make our own, or do we go with this third-party vendor? But Red Dot.
That, by the way, fits also perfectly into that world back then. We built our own CMS. We do it our own. And most of these projects crashed and burned, and it took a lot of money with them. But everybody was building a CMS back then.
I got stuck on something you said, the idea of Visual Studio showing up on like a CD. And it activated this thing in my brain of like, that's how you used to get anything. You had to go and get something physical that contained it. Yeah. And so I typed Visual Studio 2000s, and I've got an eBay listing here. And you can buy Microsoft Visual Studio 6.0 Enterprise Edition for what I think is $187 US. But it's the 3 CD system right here. And for those of you who will be listening to the podcast later, it looks like the Visual Studio logo, except like instead of the flat edges where it's like a flat infinity sign, it looks like a straight up number 8 turned on its side, like a real infinity sign. But it's the double CD case. It's that typical 2000s where it's very shiny and it's got like a ghost of an image on it rather than a full image on it. There's a key that you need on the back that is only, I think it's only 11 digits total. We can't see the key, just so you know. They blocked it with a pen cap. But you can guess. Amazing.
Yeah, it's very, we're very spoiled nowadays that it's like, if you want to do anything, try anything, you just go to the website, download, install, if that's even required. A lot of stuff you can do just in your browser. But back in the day, you had to order stuff, you had to pay for it.
You had to pay for it,
importantly. So like, I'll bet this cost a similar amount back then,
right?
You think about it. Did anybody of you guys had an MSDN subscription back then, or worked for a company?
Oh, Corbob just brought that up. You can subscribe to MSDN
because the MSDN subscription, you got a huge package with hundreds of DVDs with every product. So essentially, if you go online and look at your MSDN subscription, you see all those products that you have there. You got them on CD. Everything, and every update was shipped to you. So I think every 3 months you got a new package for your TV roaster.
I understand why Waterfall worked, because you literally had to ship products to people. You couldn't just update it. You were like, the newest update's here. Get the postal service ready. Here we go, guys. And for the young people, that's why it's called Ship It. That's shipping. We're gonna ship this new product. Like, no, we're not actually putting it in the UPS truck, but that's where the term comes from. And also the little save button, that's the floppy disk we've been talking about before for the 20-somethings that surely tune into our podcast. I love it. So, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, it's also just to throw in terms. If you hear about Apple just has a gold master of iOS or something, that's essentially the gold master that they sent down to the factory that produced the CDs from that gold master.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. But Brandon, you were talking about how nowadays you just go, and if you want to try something, they're like, "Yeah, try it here. Here's, you can use Visual Studio Code, download it for free, start using it now." And this idea of creating things so people can try it, back then you had to buy the software. There wasn't, you'd get a demo, but wasn't a lot. And that really ties into open source. There was just a shift at some point where it became, we want you to be able to try it. We want you to be able to do it because you might be able to help us make it better. And that's really what's exciting about modern tech. And Michael, you are passionate about open source, and that really takes us to to this link that we've been posting before, to Chili Cream. So what's Chili Cream?
So Chili Cream is so we started okay, I have to go a bit back.
Take us back. Paint a picture.
So essentially, all my things I did in work, I actually always did together with my brother. So my brother and me actually worked on every company together. I think there's just one company we didn't go and work together. And my brother was always the front-end guy, so he built always the UI stuff, and I was the back-end guy. So perfect match. And at one point, because he does all this JavaScript stuff, he started with this thing called open source, free software and stuff, and built open source components for something like jQuery. If somebody remembers, jQuery was his thing back then. And he started building plugins for that. And that's essentially how he pulled me into this open source space. And then there were other driving factors, like Mono came out. You had now some guy that was producing an open source .NET stuff, and that really triggered me. I wanted to break free from the things where .NET was confined to on Windows, and start doing open source software. And it took me a couple of projects. So I didn't just start with hot chocolate. I started with smaller project that were just trying out, putting something in the open. Let's work together with people and try something out. And that works quite well on GitHub. I think GitHub essentially created the platform where you collaborate on. There were others, and I tried these others. I don't remember the Microsoft Codeplex, I think. That was my first open source platform.
What, GitHub before GitHub?
Yeah, it was Microsoft's try to produce a space like GitHub. It didn't work, but everybody moved to GitHub, and then GitHub became a part of Microsoft. So in the end, they got their open source base.
That's right. They got there. They sure did. It just took $1 billion.
Yeah. Then at some point, I was on a project with my brother and this company called Swiss Life. I'm still contracting for them. And they said, we want to overhaul our whole backend APIs and do something called Graphql. And I said, what is that? Is that OData? And I actually chastised people for saying that, but back then I was in this person that's sat there, and the team lead said, you go explore GraphQL. And then I essentially went and I looked at the options that we have. It was, I think, there was GraphQL.net, one of the really first builds of them. So they were just starting, and I looked at that and I said, I don't want to do GraphQL like this. And I essentially went back to the team lead and said, let me build that. I need 2 weeks for it. And then we have a GraphQL server.
2 weeks.
It wasn't
in 2 weeks, right?
Definitely finished in 2 weeks.
It took. I think it took me half a year to have something that kind of worked, but on the first presentation, it completely broke together, and I really had to tell my colleagues, "Okay, I come back in
2 more weeks,
maybe." In the end, took a year to have a shippable product. But that essentially started this thing. In the beginning, we called the project, I think, Project Zeus, but we kind of didn't like that. And and I'm a passionate Starbucks coffee drinker, and every time I go with my son there, he wants a hot chocolate. So
did you do that on purpose, Brandon? Hold on. Brandon held up a Starbucks cup. Is it hot chocolate?
No, it's a venti flat white.
Not even a mocha. Mocha would have been at least partially hot chocolate.
I just got back from Europe, so I've been waking up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I have nothing else to do, so I just walk over to Starbucks around the corner and I grab a biggest coffee I can get.
So, Michael, tell us more about so your son loves hot chocolate, and that leads us to...
Yeah, my open source project that started then. We essentially named our GraphQL server then Hot Chocolate, because I love the stuff that my brother actually did. In JavaScript, they just have silly names, and I thought actually it's random. Like if you go and do an open source component in .NET, like let's say GraphQL, then either people call it GraphQL.NET and GraphQL, or I don't know. GraphQL link or something like that, and I thought it's kind of a bit boring, and I loved how the JavaScript guys do it, and my brother just said, let's call it Hot Chocolate, because we all were just at Starbucks, and then we went with it, and from there came up with other silly names like Chili Cream, like a software bakery around that.
I love it. You've also got Strawberry Shake, and finally, the one I think is pretty cool, Banana Cake Pop.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because at the Build conference in San Francisco, they had banana cake pops at Starbucks, and actually, when you went to the Microsoft store in the Nordstorm that they had there, they had these banana cake pops from Starbucks, and you could get some free. I don't know which year it was, but it was one of the last MS Builds at San Francisco. I
love a good cake pop. Listen, all this talk about like cake pops and strawberry shakes and hot chocolate, it's got me hungry, and that reminds me that I need to take an ad break real quick. So we'll be back after a quick word from our sponsors, y'all. Hi, if you're hearing my voice, that means you've been listening to or watching 8 Bits with Brandon and PJ. And we're here to talk to you about your product and how it can help you in your life by do whatever your product does. So if you're an avid listener of the show, or you watch us on Twitch, then you'll know that your product is right for you.
That's right. So, yes,
so actually,
we are
Starbucks.
Looking for...
So actually, Starbucks could have sponsored this show.
They should. We'll reach out to them.
That's right, Starbucks. Shoot us an email, hello@8bits.tv, or truly anybody. We are a tech-focused podcast. If you'd like to represent your tech product here, let us know. We're not looking to become millionaires. We just want to be able to pay our server costs at the end of the year.
Corbob mentioned Mountain Dew finally sponsored. I wish. And you'll notice, someday. Not a kickstart. Mountain Dew, you're losing me. You're losing me. And Korbob said
It says
product
he
and
holds up a monster.
services are the goodest. They are the goodest. That's right.
So Michael, you start building this empire of products. Known as chili cream, products known as hot chocolate, strawberry shake, banana cake pop. When does this for you turn from something? This is just a cool open source tool into maybe I can create a company out of this.
Yeah. So we're actually 2 years into the project because it's a lot of work. My main focus, or the people contracting me because I do this kind of thing. They essentially want people from the project to help them build their solutions or help them scale their solutions, review them. So it then started shifting into that direction. And we thought about, actually, it's also for us. We don't need to get rich, but it would be cool just to pay our bills for doing this. So essentially earn our money from the open source project. And we started steering this community and trying to think about things, how we can make money for ourselves from that without losing these open source components. So we are putting a lot of emphasis that we want to keep that as under the MIT license. We are not going to change that. This will always be open source. But there are always ways like that come natural, like people asking you, can you help me on my project? We are willing to pay for that. And this is essentially how we got into making it more a company around it. And in August, we finally filed our company. So we are now a Delaware company because Delaware is very tax friendly.
Delaware is such, listen, I can't believe how much big stuff is in Delaware despite being such a little state.
I too have a consulting company that's founded in Delaware.
That's right. Thanks, Delaware.
I don't know why.
Look, that's just the advice. That's just what you do. So congratulations in August. That's only... I forgot how to do math there for a second. A few months ago.
A few months ago. Until then, we essentially earned our money through contracting. So we are a core team of 3. And then we have like the core contributor team around that of another 6 persons that are only working on the open source stuff. And we 3 core persons, Raphael, my brother, and Pascal, essentially started building it more and more into a company and building tools around that, like Banana Cake Pop, which we hope at one point will give us more stability to live on. But
I love that.
Yeah, it's a try.
Because that's always something that seems counterintuitive, because your code is open source. I can go get it on GitHub. We can go to github.com/chiliCream and there's all the products. And so somebody outside looking in that's maybe not familiar with the open source world might think like, well, that's silly, because that would be like Coca-Cola posting their formula and then Pepsi could just steal it. So what is that business model around open source software? And have we moved away from necessarily the code and the software being that main product?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like the .NET code is on GitHub. It's open source, so you don't necessarily earn money from selling .NET to somebody. The same is for us. We don't earn if somebody has a hot chocolate server. I don't want to earn of that. But we earn money with the things around that. People needing specialists on that. People buying workshops with us, or also enterprise services around that, like advanced telemetry and stuff like that. So you can earn a lot of money with things around open source and keep actually the whole software free. And if somebody doesn't want to pay, then doesn't have to. There is no license that you have to pay. It's an MIT license. You can fork it. You can use it. And I think that is, I like that more. Like when I use .NET and something goes wrong, I just look in their code. And if I find an issue, I can essentially fix it and do a PR. So it's a much opener approach to software engineering, but still there is money that you can earn around these things. Like Microsoft with Azure, around that they don't earn from .NET, but with things around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've noticed that similar trend because if you look at even the biggest tech companies today versus 10 years ago, if you wanted to update to, say, Windows 10, you had to buy a Windows 10 license. Or Apple was doing the same thing with Mac, where if you wanted to update to Snow Leopard, you had to buy the new version of Snow Leopard. And it feels like the industry's gotten to a point where the software itself doesn't bring in enough money to warrant that high barrier to entry. And if you get people onto your platform, then you can more easily keep them there, more easily introduce them to other services you offer. And yeah, it's a common trend I'm seeing with the open source world where, yeah, hey, let's make this product open source because enterprise companies actually love that, because that means if for some reason there's an open source project that the maintainers decide they don't want to do anything anymore, that's okay because the source code is still theirs. Like you said, they can fork it, they can still maintain all their services. But at the same time, having worked at enterprises, they are very, very concerned about support and will pay a lot of money for support. And I remember when I worked at a company called Harris, our support contracts were always more valuable than the initial installation contracts. And it was always, quite literally, when we would bid for contracts, we would take a hit on the front end. So maybe install it at a loss, but then say, hey, we want to support this for 10 years. And here's what we're going to charge you every year for 10 years for that support. And at that point, that's where you actually make back that money. And so, I'm seeing that a lot with the open source world, where with support contracts, where things like if an enterprise needs to get a hold of you or one of your engineers at Chili Cream, you can guarantee them something like 24-hour support or 72-hour support.
Exactly.
And you'll respond back and help them fix any problems. And that's almost more valuable to them than had they paid for the product.
Exactly. And that's essentially how we make money with it. And we have like community support. So people that go into our platform, they can just join us on Slack and get a lot of support for free. But it's a best effort thing, and companies want to have this. They want a reliable tap on the developer of the platform.
Right, because what's useful about a tool is, do you have access to the tool, and then do you know how to use the tool? So you got the software, cool. If something goes wrong, do you know how to fix it? Do you know how to make it work? And God, I love it. That's fantastic. I'm taking notes over here.
And truly, when you think about big online retailers like Amazon and Walmart, they know how much revenue they make per minute. And so literally if the website just goes down for a couple minutes, they're out millions of dollars. And so for them to pay for a support contract where within 24 hours you'll have experts on the phone or on the servers fixing it. That's almost a no-brainer to them. It's this insurance policy that says, hey, this website, instead of going down for a week, worst case scenario, we'll have it back up and running in a day.
If anything goes down for a week, it does not exist anymore. Like,
Yeah,
what was Facebook down? Facebook was down for 3 days.
What?
Wasn't it?
What?
Or was it 2 days?
They were partly. They came.
Oh, yeah. When they locked themselves out of their own servers.
I had already forgotten that they had to break into their own servers.
And the issue were there. They almost dragged down Cloudflare.
Oh my gosh!
Really? Yeah, because they got all these additional requests, that then again checked for failing DNS
that's
stuff.
amazing.
And we are running on Cloudflare.
Was it a day? It was only a day. My brain remembers it as like half a week, man.
A day, yeah.
It was a single day. Yeah,
it was
long day. You're right.
It
was like a year-long loss of Facebook, which might be a good thing for the world for a little bit. Or what is it? It's Meta now, right?
Yeah, but it was
much
more. I think people are not so concerned about Facebook, but Instagram is also Facebook, and
that's right.
Even
WhatsApp?
My wife was affected. Yeah. Yeah, WhatsApp. You're right. These are the critical things now.
So back to open source, the idea of support and the idea of like stuff's free now. Like I remember, Brandon, when you started teaching me to code, everything was free. Like here's an IDE, it's free. Here's Visual Studio, it's free. And I was like, I remember at one point going, this is crazy that all of this is just free. But that's kind of what I said earlier. It has just shifted to what is valuable is getting more people involved. And not just like in an open source project, it's valuable that you have support for it. If something goes wrong, if something is not working well, the open source community can be like, oh, this isn't working well. I think I know a way to make this better. And they can contribute. And that contribution and the desire to fix things seems to be what is part of the open source community. Amazing.
Yeah, and that's even that is a great thing. Like when I started the project with my brother, but now we have over 100 contributors, people that are working also on that platform. And
congratulations! That's a good number of contributors too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now we only have about 5 minutes left, Michael. But I'd love to get your advice. So let's say there's somebody out there right now who, similar to you, they're young, they're interested in technology, they're not sure if they should go to college or how to get started. What would be your recommendation to that person?
Yeah, first, I wouldn't worry about making a big decision when I'm young. I would just go first with the thing that feels best for you. That essentially was how I did it, and then I just went with the flow. In order to get into tech, there's so many ways. I would actually start with open source from my perspective, and going to open source projects or going to user groups will open up a lot of other contacts, because what I have experienced in my life is that you need to meet the right people that help you on board. Then it's much easier than if you struggle alone and try out on your own. For me, it was always best the people that essentially helped me and lifted me, like from my small age on, my father, that guided me into things. Then I had a lot of mentors during my career that then helped me open the right doors. So, and don't worry to make mistakes.
Yeah, and you mentioned user groups. I know meetup.com has a lot. That's usually where I find a lot of fellow developer user groups. Are there any else you'd like to recommend?
Yes. So I'm involved with my friend Jose, who's running the user group. We're having a user group here, but it's also on Meetup. There are a lot of .NET user groups. That's the space where I'm at, but there are GraphQL user groups, JavaScript user groups. So there are user groups for whatever makes you happy. So that's a great place to actually start and even look at if that is something that you would like for a career, or if it's just a hobby for you. And then start tinkering with
Fantastic
stuff.
advice.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you so much coming on the show, Michael. Hopefully we've inspired somebody out there to get started, start searching for your local user groups, take advantage of this open source world we live in where you can get free tools. So Michael, for anybody listening who wants to keep up with you, follow everything you're working on, where can they find you online?
So first you can naturally follow me on Twitter if you want. But if you want to, even if it's your first contribution to open source, if you want to get into open source, start with us, start with Chili Cream. We have a lot of very interesting projects. So yeah, try out. And we are very open, and we accept anybody who wants to help.
Love it. Love it. And that's for anybody listening on the audio podcast, it's github.com/chili-cream. So
Two
check
eyes.
it out. That's right.
Yes, it's a
cream, CREAM.
It doesn't taste good, but it is a great thing to be a part of.
Yeah, my wife is British, so
It's perfect.
I have to.
Michael, it's truly been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on the podcast this week. And thank you for listening. We're actually taking a break for the rest of the year, so you won't see me and PJ again until January. But we already have a couple guests queued up, so make sure to subscribe, make sure to tune back in, and we will see you next year.